So we're in Durham here, coming on Palace Green. Lovely morning. So why are we here?
We're here asking for our children in the future. We are really worried and concerned here in the north about what's happening to our children. We're going to show an image on Palace Green of 1,000 pairs of children's shoes for two reasons. One, to show the number of children, thousands and thousands of children that have already died due to climate change. Forest fires, floods, but mainly drought. Drought in the developing world is killing loads and loads of children, thousands, because they can't feed their cattle and they can't grow their crops. And the second reason is because we're worried about our own children for the future. We don't know what this is going to bring, but we know that we'll have to act now. As you can see, we have to act now, because if we don't, coronavirus is bad, but climate change is 1,000 times worse if we let it run. We have to start now to stop it, to break it up, to draw a line and say we are going to make sure that our children of the future have a chance.
So you've got some shoes, some children's shoes.
All
now,
children's shoes.
They've been kind of around the world a bit.
Well,
what's the history of them?
The history of the shoes is the idea started in Holland, but people throughout our country, through the UK, have donated 2,000 pairs of children's shoes, and we have 1,000 of them, and we're going to put them out this morning, hopefully to show an image of how we care for our children in the future.
Right, thank you. So this area here is going to be covered with children's shoes.
Yes.
Help.
Yes, we've got a great team. We've got a great team of about 15 people, and they've all turned up, and we've set it up like this, and it looks great. It looks absolutely fantastic, and we're really pleased. If we can have some people here just to see what's going on, that'll be great.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some drones of children up there. And
yeah. They were done by our artists. We've got 3 artists in the group, and they've painted them freehand. They are brilliant.
Okay, I mean, I'm supposed to do all of this. I've been out let's say to John. You can ask them all the same question.
And I'm a grandparent, and I'm here because I'm really concerned about the climate crisis, and I've been concerned for a long time, and nothing we did seemed to make any changes. If you find an odd shoe, just put it perhaps in the blue box.
I'm going to add 2 back. I've got one here.
Okay. I've got some more odd shoes. Sure, about this right
Yeah, when we have a box, I'll put them in there.
You're going to have to come with me. I've already spoken to Austin about
Aye.
it. Yeah. And what is it? Austin says he's going to cry if we try and take his...
So what are you doing there, Kevin?
I'm just holding this sound equipment.
All right, they look very professional.
So that Jack can get a
Right.
pictures right. And the
Aye,
sound
so
in with
it's
the
to trust you.
Couldn't do without him.
Before I ask them to speak, I just want to outline what happened today. We've been planning putting these children's shoes on Parrots Green for about a month now. We managed to acquire them. Joe and I went down to Cambridge and picked them up. There's shoes all over the country, but we managed to get 1,000 pairs. And it's ironic that they're right in front of the cathedral, which is 1,000 years old. So we've got a pair for every year that the cathedral's been there. And of course, we'd love it to be here for another 1,000, but that is a problem. It's a problem for us. We mainly did it so that we can highlight that we in the north care so much for our children and our future children. We want them to have a life, and we don't know the way that the science is. If you've looked at the science, we're talking, some people talk about 50 or 60 years, but really, I'm wondering about my youngest grandson is 13, and he'll be 33 in 20 years' time, and I don't know what kind of planet we will have at that stage. I don't know. I just pray that we are doing enough these days to make sure that there's a difference. And don't think we can't make a difference, because we can. We can make a big difference individually as well as together. I think that's about enough to tell you why the shoes are here, or except to say that apart from our future, these shoes represent thousands and thousands of children who have already died because of the climate, because of global warming. People in the southern hemisphere are dying now because of forest fires, because of flooding, and of course we've had flooding in this country, but mainly because of drought. Drought is a terrible thing in the developing world, and you can't have cows. The cows have got nothing to drink, and of course you can't grow crops. So that's a second thought for what's happening today. So I've got some brilliant people to speak today, and the one who's going to speak first is Mary Foy, the Member of Parliament for this area, and she so kindly accepted our invitation to come along and speak on our behalf. So can I give it up for Mary, please?
The climate crisis doesn't get mentioned enough, and it's not taken seriously enough in politics. Everything we do as a society should be focused on improving the future, to make the world a better, fairer and safer place to live. We cannot do this unless we take the climate emergency seriously. In the last election, the Labour Party had a forward plan for the climate. The Green New Deal was one of the most excited policies that I was willing to happen, and it went down really very well on the doorstep. It promised to transform our economy in order to prioritise the environment and to eliminate the deep-rooted inequality that exists in society and indeed across the world. It was a policy that offered genuine solutions to the crisis, one that put people before profit and the environment before big business. Even though we lost the election, it's vital that the commitment to tackling the climate crisis remains. The Labour Party must be ambitious and progressive in its climate policy, because the very future of the planet depends on it. And whilst the coronavirus pandemic has caused incredible damage to our society and the economy, the rebuild offers us an opportunity. Rather than building things back to the way they were, we should be building a new society with equality and the environment at the heart of this. We simply cannot afford to go back to business as usual. Unfortunately, while we're in opposition, the Labour Party can't really affect the structural change that we need. But that doesn't mean that we're powerless and have to sit by and watch this government destroy the planet. But in order to force change, we must keep the pressure on this government and keep them accountable and honest. We must make them listen to the concerns of millions of people in the UK who know that we're running out of time to tackle the climate crisis. And whilst this is going to be tough, we can take encouragement from the young people, the student activists who last week pressed the government into a U-turn on their exam results. They knew that they'd suffered an injustice and they knew that they had to force change quickly. They took their argument to the streets, to their MPs, and they made people listen. And it's such a shame that people have to keep protesting against the government in order to protect their futures. But the reality is, on issues that really concern us, we're going to have to fight them every step of the way to create a better and fairer and more sustainable society. And I'll keep pushing the government to improve their approach to the climate. But in order for them to really listen, we need sustained pressure from the public. The government listened to the students not because they had a desire to do the right thing, but because they feared the political damage it would cause. And as I said to the young people last week, when the government try to take away your future, you threaten to take away theirs. So keep protesting and make those people in power listen. Thank you.
Dad and his family, and he's a great fella, and he's now leader of Gateshead Metropolitan Borough Council, and he's down from Northumberland just to be with us to speak, and then he's going to dash back again. So could you give it up, please, for Martin Gannon?
It sounds much better than it is. It's a fabulous Puma, but we have a caravan up in Puma, so my daughter's up there. Thanks very much for inviting us to come down. Kevin, when he made the introduction, was saying we just published. I was telling people we have about 11 years to make the changes necessary to make sure that we don't have a reversible change. That's why Gateshead Council at that time passed a resolution that we declared a climate emergency. We're under pressure to do so. People circling the civic centre, you lot, on bikes blocking the roads. But it was something that actually was raised within the Labour group of Gateshead Council prior to those protests taking place. It was something we wanted to do. Hasn't been easy, as I'm sure you're aware from some of the issues we had just 2 weeks ago, where we had to make changes to the road system, not because of climate change, although climate change is on our agenda, but because of air quality issues. 400 people a year are dying on Tyneside because the air kills them because we're clogging the roads with traffic, and we need to do something about that. We're being made to do it by European legislation. We shouldn't be made to do it. We should be doing it anyway, but at least I can politically fall back on the excuse of, oh, the government is making us do these things because international regulations are making them doing it, but the fact is it's going to happen. The fact is that the Tyne Bridge will close down to one lane, the flyover in Gateshead will have to close, and we then have 8 lanes of traffic trying to get across one lane on the Tyne Bridge. So people will have to make change. Kevin also mentioned the issue about poverty, about the fact that so many people already around the world are suffering and dying. I read another report which said that it was actually by, I'm trying to remember the name of the report, and some people I'm sure will have read it, but he was the chief of the defence staff in Australia, where he was discussing the geopolitical consequences of climate change. And what he said was, within the next 20 years, we'll be facing the fact that over 1 billion people will be unable to live where they currently live. Now, we've seen how the UK media, in the middle of a COVID crisis, with all the problems that we face, go absolutely berserk about a few desperate families who are so desperate they squeeze themselves into dinghies to travel across the English Channel to escape poverty. And I say that, like many of us here, Mary, Evan and others who come from Irish families who escaped poverty in the 1840s. They were economic migrants. And many people who are doing the screaming and shouting bawling are the descendants of economic migrants. But we'll face one of the consequences of global change is that within the next 20 years, 1 billion people will not be able to live where they currently live. And the consequences of that in terms of conflict. This is why he was seen from a military perspective, that it throws the dynamics of global politics into real problems. And the issue is about poverty, people fleeing poverty. We haven't quite got 400 people here. I also read that 400 people, it depends how you calculate these things, but about 400 people own 50% of the world's wealth. That's a pretty staggering figure, really, isn't it? You really think about it. You can get them in one room. What it means is that the other 50% is shared between 6 billion people. And actually, if you see the figures, though the bottom 10% literally own absolutely nothing, living in desperate poverty. That's what's been exaggerated. It's actually that our system causes that. It's about accumulation of wealth, which creates the conditions that create climate change. So there's less than 400 of us here, but we're right and they're wrong. And I don't know who it was who said it, but there's nothing as powerful as an idea that time has come. Actually, nobody else said it. I've said it.
After that, I've got a request to make to you all, and Laurie's going to sing a couple of short songs. But to finalise our speaking, we have a councillor from Durham itself who's been a supporter of us for a long time, and he's kindly come along to join us this morning. Just before he does, we have 3 main aims in Extinction Rebellion, and the third one was the one that Martin was talking about, and that is that we need to join with citizens' assemblies together to make decisions together, other than the politicians. The other ones, or the second one, is that we have a climate emergency. We declared a one last November and nothing happened. So that was the second one. And the first one, of course, is tell the truth. Let us hear the truth, please. We'll never get the truth. Let us hear the truth, not from our people who got this morning, but from government and other circles. Now, without further ado, can I introduce you to Councillor John Clare from Durham.
You've seen that I was so excited to get speaking that I jumped the queue. What a fantastic event. Thank you very much indeed. Do not, this is not a rally, quite clearly. What this is, it's a display, it's an artwork, and the power of the message of these 750 pairs, I counted them. There's another 250 pairs in a box which they couldn't spread out, there's not enough room. But the power of this artwork, this apocalyptic scene of empty shoes, of children's shoes with nobody filling them, if that doesn't carry a message to the world from today, then you've failed to pass it on effectively through your social media and through your friendships. So thank you for coming. Thank you to the people who shared, put them out, and I think we're going to be asked to help to clear them away afterwards, but there we go. I'm going to speak very shortly to you. I'm going to remember back to when I was a teacher, and I'm going to remember when I used to teach about the railways. And I used to teach about a concept called the velocity of transactions. And I used to do it in the following way. I used to take £1 and I used to go to the front desk and I used to buy something, it was a forced purchase, from the child on the front desk. If they weren't sharp, it'd be something good like a cell phone, but sort of if they had the wits about them, it didn't matter as long as it was something to buy. It's sort of the shavings from your sharpening your pencils, it would have done. It didn't matter as long as that purchase was made. Then they used to make us wait. And then after a long while, I used to allow the pupil in front of me to do the same to the person next to them. And after a short scuffle, that transaction would have been finished. And I used to ask the class, what is the wealth of this community? And of course, they always used to say £1, because they used to think that money, wealth, is specie. But it's not at all, is it? The wealth of that community was £3, because there was £1 in money and there were 2 sets of goods to the value, notionally, of £1. And they used to say to the class, right, let's increase the wealth of our community. How fast can we increase the velocity of transactions? And it used to be a great lesson, this one, because they all used to line up what they wanted to sell, and they used to take my £1 and they used to pass it around at huge speed. Sometimes we got sort of 80, 90 pounds worth of wealth just by passing this £1 coin faster and faster and faster around the class. And then we used to talk about the nature of our society and our economy nowadays, because so much of our wealth is based not on production, based not on anything but the velocity of transactions, the speed with which we are making the transactions between each other. And the pupils used to come up with a number of issues. One of the things they used to realize was that our wealth is largely illusory. It is not based in things we possess. It's based simply in sort of, as Jamie Driscoll says, selling coffee to each other. I sell you a coffee, you sell me a pizza, we consume them, and we have to do it, not just have to do it fast, but have to do it faster and faster to maintain the vigor of a growing economy, of a GDP which is based essentially on the velocity of transactions. And the second thing we realized, of course, it doesn't make you happy, this. None of these mental health problems are growing. And part of the problem of that is indeed the fact that we are having to run faster and faster and faster, spending faster and faster and faster just to keep our heads above water economically. We're coming out of COVID. You can't see your grandma. You can't go to your home and talk to your grandma. You can take her to Wetherspoons, because we have to spend that money in some kind of panic buying. And no wonder people are upset, because what they're doing is they are spending money which they do not really possess, which they're having to borrow, and they're giving it to people who, quite frankly, have so much money it'd take them 1,000,000 lifetimes and they still wouldn't have spent it. And there's this massive injustice there. And the simple... And the third thing is that's happening, and that this is destroying our world. Our economic model is destroying our world today. And that's because it's a linear economic model. And it works on the principle that what you do is you rip the riches of the earth out at one end. You take the minerals out of the mountains, the fish out of the sea, the trees out of the forest, the goodness out of the soil. And then you transfer it, you make it, I forgot the word, you make it into stuff. What kind of stuff? It doesn't matter what stuff it is, just make it, so to make sure it drops apart as quickly as possible. Cover it with packaging, sort of that, goods and services, consumables. For goodness sake, just make something and sell it. We need it for the economy to thrive. And then you end up with all this crap at the end of it, and you say, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And chuck it in the sea, for goodness sake. Just get rid of it, because you've got to get back and start buying stuff at the other end. And sort of, I'm on the left of politics, and I'm used to people calling me a nutcase and a dreamer. But the fact of the matter is, you have to wonder at an economic system which is an extinction level event in itself. Our economy, our economic model is an extinction level event. And there's some wonderful adverts out there. The WHO one is absolutely super if you've seen it. But the truth of the matter, they're talking about, well, there must be no going back. Sort of, we don't want to go back to the old normal, and people are talking about the new normal. But the truth of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, is that we don't need to just sort of not go back. We need to find a new direction, a new direction which heads us off. And so, thank goodness to, and I will say one thing: nobody's to blame for any of this. There's no guilt. It's nobody's fault. It's just the net result of 300 years of capitalism and last 30 years of unrestrained capitalism. But if we don't change in our direction, we're all going to die. And sort of people say, John, you shouldn't talk like that. It's trying to frighten people into action. And those poor children who are getting worried, sort of, and that's true, because I was talking to the lady from Bishop Auckland Climate Action, who are fantastic, by the way, and sort of I was saying that we are not going to die because of climate change. Sort of, we will die, having caused the problem, we will probably die before the crunch hits. Sort of, it's these ones who will suffer the consequences. And that's why the shoes are empty. And we have to do something about it. And that's why, thank goodness, to Extinction Rebellion, thank goodness that you're beginning to crank up the volume again. Sort of, everybody's fallen asleep lockdown, obviously during lockdown, and we just need to remind them that this is the big issue. It's not whether Wetherspoons manages to go through without going bankrupt. The big issue here is that sort of, we need to alert people to the climate change. All the very best for your September month of rebellion. That has to work, sort of. And if you've ever heard me talk, sort of, you'll know that I start off fairly gently, and I get excited in the middle, and sort of, I always peter out uncomfortably at the end. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed. It just remains for me to thank everybody. But before I do, what would be really nice if you could do it, if everybody could start along the back here and go down either side as far as we can, with a 2 metre distance in between everybody. See if we can get Austin and Jack to take a picture of the shoes with us gathered in a U shape round this end. Is that all right? Will you do that for us? And Laurie's going to sing a couple of short songs in the idiom that we're in. I'd like to thank our team. Been great. Everybody's turned up. Thank you, Jack and Austin, for doing the film and recording. And really, thank you all for coming, because without you, we wouldn't have had anybody to talk to. But we hope we have a big weekend next weekend, a banner drop, and we're going to attack not attack the banks, but make them stand up and speak at on Monday, and things in between as well. So I would just like to say thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you. God bless you.
The women who change the laws. I paint with my colors as bright as the courage that shines through the cracks in the walls that you realigned. Can you hear the footsteps on the path you paved? Can you hear the footsteps on the path you paved? You lit a spark in the dark that marked a change. You shed a light on equal rights to be claimed. The shape of your footprints not always understood. Not all your names made the history books, but can you hear the footsteps on the path he paved? Can you hear the footsteps on the path he paved? Thank you. I sang that song because the suffragettes are such an inspiration to change. And I'm going to sing you a song. Friends, I didn't mean to stop you when you were having such a fine time. But this is an emergency. Our house is all on fire. And so we have to rise up now, or this will turn to ashes. I'm sorry, my friends, I didn't mean to trouble you when you were having such a fine time. But this is an emergency, there'll be no food for eating. And so we have to rise up now, or this knife will be for fighting. I'm sorry, my children, I didn't want to frighten you. And this is no ghost story. This is an emergency. Our leaders have all failed us. And so we have to rise up now and join the rebellion. And so we have to rise up now and join the rebellion.
Right, we'll have, just 2 meters along here, then down the